All right, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Student Affairs Live. It's about 4 o'clock Eastern Time, so yeah, let's get started. My name is Eric Stoller. I'm the host of Student Affairs Live, and this is your weekly web show about student affairs topics for student affairs professionals. Now, I want to let everyone know that Student Affairs Live is part of the Higher Ed Live network. Feel free to go to higheredlive.com. Check out our show archives and some blog posts there as well. And if you are trying to find the live stream on our site, it's at higheredlive.com/live. For today's show, please feel free to follow the action using the SA Live hashtag, that's #SA Live, as well as following at Higher Ed Live. We'll be tweeting all sorts of resources and show notes throughout the broadcast, so please feel free to check that out. It is about a bajillion degrees out here in Columbia, South Carolina, so I'm just getting used to this whole air conditioning thing. As an Oregonian, it's not my thing having the air conditioning on. So I've got a really good show today. I'm really excited, but before we get too far into the show, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor. Student Affairs Live is sponsored by Integral, the creators of the Schools app on Facebook. Be sure to check out their webinar series about how they can help you leverage Facebook to increase yield and retention. That happens this Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And Ardith, who's tweeting as Higher Ed Live, is sending out a tweet with that link right now. So, really exciting show today. I've been calling it Alt Pro Dev, sort of short for Alternative Professional Development. And joining me today on the show to talk about this topic is Jeff Jackson. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
How's it going, Eric? And welcome to the South.
Oh, thank you. I've had my first sweet tea already. It was exciting.
Yes, but you'll love the winter.
That's what I hear. Although it snows here too, so I guess we get a little of everything.
Yeah.
So Jeff's going to be sort of riding along as I go through my feature for the week, but one thing I want to start off with is my sort of weekly feature called Challenge and Support. Challenge and Support is where I talk about some things that are happening in higher education news, share some tidbits, some commentary, some opinions, that sort of thing. So I'm going to dive right on in here. And first thing I wanted to highlight was an article that came out of the Gazette-Times. That's the Corvallis, Oregon newspaper. And the article was entitled Growing, Growing, Gone. And it's about the city of Corvallis and how it's dealing with the growth of Oregon State University. Oregon State University is a school that's grown from 15,000 students or so to 20,000 to about 25,000, I think, this year. And they're projected to keep growing into the 30,000, 35,000, etc. And Corvallis is a town of about 55,000 people. And so what's that going to do to the town, the infrastructure, everything from parking, housing, utilities, you name it. It's going to really change the landscape of the community. And so it's an interesting article. The comments on the article are interesting to read as well. And I just wonder what's going to happen in a lot of different places that are sort of these traditional college towns that are really increasing enrollment at the universities that are sort of the anchors for these communities. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And please feel free to tweet out via the SA Live hashtag if this is happening at your institution, at your community. I'm guessing it's not necessarily something that happens at a larger urban institution, but it could as well. So please feel free to tweet out some examples if you have some. Also, last week's show, I talked about what happened at Yale University with regards to one of their fraternities, and they were doing some just really sexist, misogynist chants towards women, and it was just really gross and really unfortunate. And so Yale, I believe, banned them from participating in activities in the university for, I think, 5 years. And this article asked the question, where are the outraged fraternity men? And I think that's a really good question because it sort of begs the question of where are folks who are in the fraternal community, who are outraged about what was going on at Yale to kind of come out and speak up and say, hey, this is not what fraternities are about. These are not the values that we uphold. This is not the identity of our organizations. And I really feel like folks need to come out because in the news you always hear about the negative things that happen with Greek life. And you don't hear enough about the sort of positive things, the leadership stances. And so I really hope some folks from the fraternal community come out and say, hey, this isn't who we are, this isn't what we're all about. And you know what, people make mistakes, but we can be better. And so I really hope that there's some feedback from the Greek life community. While I was away, when I was moving from Oregon to South Carolina, my friend Ed Cabellin came out with this awesome idea to fund some scholarships for student affairs graduate students, part of the SA Grow Mentoring Mentee program. And it's a donation-based service. You go in there, you put in your money, and the scholarships are going to help fund some students that can go to a conference. I believe the goal is a couple thousand. They're up to $800 and some already. Ardith will be tweeting that out there. Please feel free to donate. It's a really good cause, and it shows how the community of folks who are on Twitter can get together and really make a difference and hopefully model some things that maybe our broader associations might think about doing in the future with regards to social media and raising funds for graduate students, because we know money is tight right now, and anything we can do to help get our grads to be able to attend programs is really important. So definitely take a look at that. I saw in my inbox this morning an email from NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, just stating a simple fact that paid interns spend more time on professional tasks. And it sort of seems like an obvious thing that if you have an internship program, that if you pay your students, they're probably going to maybe be a bit more productive. So this is an interesting article on the fact that, yes, they do spend more time doing professional tasks if you pay them. And I know Jeff and I were talking earlier before the broadcast started about how there's been talk of people not paying their interns and maybe making it a mandate in higher education. Well, an internship is like a job, and if your department, your unit, whoever it is that's hosting the internship program has the opportunity to provide some funds for a student, do it. You're not putting out a ton of cash, but you're going to help that student with their experience. So definitely take a look at that one. And I was listening to Jeff Jackson's Break Drink Campus Tech Connection podcast, one of the many things that Jeff is involved with that we're going to talk about here in a second. And Jeff mentioned a tweet from Kyle Oman. And Kyle just put this out there. Dear student affairs professionals, quote, residence halls, end quote, is not search engine optimization or SEO friendly. What incoming freshman will choose that over dorms? And I think Kyle's point is that when it comes to searching on the web, Googling different things, people search for the word dorm more so than they do for residence hall. Now I know that folks who work in res life, it's a big deal, kind of the difference between, you live in a residence hall, you experience life in a residence hall, and a dorm is just kind of where you put your things. And I know that it's really easy to get sort of involved in the semantic side of that. However, when you go to sort of like a CNN or a New York Times, when they put up a story, they call it a dorm. And I think it's really important for us, especially from the marketing side of things, to realize that if we continue to put in content that is using the phrasing residence halls, people might not find our buildings, and that's what they want to see, especially prospective students. So I know there's sort of a interesting sort of dichotomy between maybe folks that do housing marketing versus folks that do sort of res life programming, and I hope that folks realize that sometimes the semantics aren't worth kind of dying over, because guess what, people are searching for the word dorm. Now, go ahead. Let me put you on the air here, Jeff.
Yeah, and Eric, I think it's something. It's not that we have to use it in our everyday life, but it's to take ownership of it. And if we say that we're not going to own that word, other people are. And Kyle's from the University of Arizona, and I was there. And if you Google UA dorm or University of Arizona dorm, then you'll find about when there was a murder that happened on campus, bad reviews of residence halls. Things that happen, because that's what the media uses, that's what the other groups use. And so if you want to have a good impression of it, look on there. And I put a link out on the SA Live, if you're watching us, the SA Live hashtag. It is how many times people Google dorm versus res life versus student housing versus residence life. And the word dorm is by far Googled more than any of these other terms, and res life barely even registers on there at all. And so it, as far as people looking for that word, there's far more people looking for that word than other terms that we want them to use.
Right. Well, and it's just it's the common everyday vernacular, and I think that it looks like Julie Payne-Kirchmeier asked sort of in what way, and I want to just reiterate the point from Kyle's tweet here, put it up on the air again, is that it's not that it's sort of putting dorm in place of residence life from a programming perspective. It's more about from a search engine marketing perspective, that when students are searching, or their parents are searching, or anyone's searching for that matter, for information about residence halls, they're usually typing in the word dorm. And as Jeff tweeted a few moments ago, that just the stats alone say that people search for the word dorm more often than residence hall. So that's something to think about, especially for marketers. Now, again, when I speak at a Kuhoai in New Orleans in July, am I going to use that 4-letter word? Probably not so much. However, something to think about, especially when it comes to marketing and what you're doing. So another story that I saw today actually was that some students at Western Michigan University made their own app for smartphones. It's for iPhones or for Android-based devices at Western Michigan. It was part of a project. These were some of their computer science students, and I thought it was really cool because you'll see a smartphone app developed at a university by a company or an outside entity, and oftentimes it'll only be released, at least initially, on iPhone. So I thought it was really cool that some students got together, whipped up this app. It's for Android, it's for iPhone, and it could be an example for other campuses to follow suit, to say, hey, we've got brilliant students on our campuses that could come in and make things for our university while they're here. Students can, obviously, it's a feather in their cap, it's for their resume, that type of thing, and the university gets an awesome service. So take a look at that article. And last but not least, I wanted to just kind of put a shout out to the National Conference on Student Recruitment, Marketing, and Retention. It's in July, it's in Denver, it's put on by Noel Levitz, and I am fortunate that I get to attend this year's event, and it looks like it's going to be an amazing conference. I've been looking through the session descriptions. It's a little something for everyone, from orientation, marketing, there's social media information, retention information, international student stuff about transfer students, you name it. There's a lot of stuff going on in this conference, and I think that at least in the circles that I sort of roll with, a lot of student affairs professionals aren't necessarily familiar with this conference. So something to check out as you're sort of looking through conferences to attend either this year or maybe next year, depending on your budget, information that you've got right now. All right, so as you know, I like to do a little feature every week, an unsolicited shout out. It could be a person, a place, a service, a business, that type of thing. Well, excuse me, this week, the shout out goes to everybody, and I'm going to tell you why. Because for those folks who are at semester schools, a lot of you have gone through graduation, you've gone through commencement. Kudos to you for the amazing work that you put in throughout the course of the year. You've worked really hard. Your students have walked, they've graduated, and it's just exciting. So you've had a busy time. Take a breath, pat yourself on the back, and realize that you had a really good year. Now, for those folks at quarter schools, I'm not going to forget about you because I used to go to and work at one. Hang in there. It's almost June. You got a little more time to go, but it's coming. The finish line is coming for the end of your spring term, and I really want to give all of you a shout out of the week because it's a great time right now for higher education. People are working hard. Student affairs folks might be a little tired, but guess what? You did a great job. So again, unsolicited shout out of the week this week to all of my student affairs folks out there because you do a really good job. Okay, so this show, the Alt Pro Dev Show, wouldn't have happened, actually. We probably wouldn't have the show, wouldn't have any of this without Jeff Jackson. I'm going to give a quick bio, the introduction here for Jeff Jackson. It's a little long, so bear with me. He's got a new title, and so I want to make sure I let everybody know what it is. So Jeff Jackson is the Director of Student Life at the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio, as well as the creator of BreakDrink.com. Thanks, Jeff. Well, yeah. Jeff, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you on, and I know that you were actually my first unsolicited shout-out of the week on the very first episode of Student Affairs Live. And the reason for it is you're the creator of BreakDrink.com. Mm-hmm. And I know this show is all about alternative forms of professional development. Talk to us a little bit about Break Drink. What is it, and why did you come up with it?
Yeah, it all happened accidentally, I gotta say. I mean, how it is now, accidentally. And so I worked for OrgSync for a little bit, and I kind of got to start the blog that they did, and they let me do a lot of kind of really cool stuff in the social media space. I left them for family reasons, and for a while I kind of missed being in the technology area, but I really loved higher education, so I wanted to start a blog dedicated to kind of news items or trends specifically related to student affairs. So we just started blogging, and I was unemployed at the time, so it was kind of easy. and then I get a job, and then blogging several times a day gets kind of hard when you have a job, and so that was hard. So then we started just doing more podcasts, and then about the time we realized that people weren't able to go to conferences, so we tried to do an online conference, and eventually we just kind of became a professional development website. We have four now regular podcasts. We're about to add a couple more this summer, and I'm not doing those, so it's growing in a sense that like I really have no control of what's going on, honestly. Everyone else is doing it for me, but there's great people. And so I can trust Jeff Bell, Nora Pasquini, and Julie Larson, and Gary, and then Jamie Workman and Ed Gilhold. They're all great professionals that have been in student affairs for a while, and they're adding like great content out there and podcasts. And they're trying a little bit different stuff with conferences. I can talk about that a little bit later on. But but we never set out to be like a professional development site. It just kind of accidentally happened as we were, just blogging.
Nice. Well, sometimes those accidents are the best things that happen sometimes. So it's exciting because I know you're getting a decent amount of traffic. You've got listeners. And you post. So tell us, you post things, but there's blog posts, but there's also podcasts.
Yeah, there's fewer and fewer blog posts. Every now and then we'll get inspired to go back and do a blog post. The most we do, Sarah Craddock does a great job of kind of mining the daily data that comes out on student affairs, either blogs or news sites or newspapers. And she posts kind of the top news stories in student affairs every day. We call it the daily dose.
Okay.
That's most of the blogging that's happening. And then we post the podcast. If you don't want to listen to it down on iTunes, we'll post the podcast online, so you can listen to it online also. But we have well over 200 people on average per podcast, like downloads per podcast. So we've had some upwards to in the 600s.
Oh, wow.
Don't know who that would be. I can only download it so many times. And so we have it's gaining popularity. The little graph is going up as far as popularity. So it's kind of cool because you think you do this into a vacuum, and like the 5 people that listen to it live are the 5 people that listen to it. But then you look at the stats later, and I'd honestly stopped looking at the stats, and I went back and looked at it and saw that one month we had up to 2,700 downloads. Oh, wow. And so we're pretty excited about the direction things are going.
Well, so why do you think people are drawn to this form of professional development?
I mean, we've been doing it a little over a year. And then I know Seth started the Hire Live almost a year ago. Mm-hmm. I think he's coming up on a year.
Yeah. And
prior to that, there wasn't a lot directed at the student affairs professional. Inside Higher Ed had one that they do occasionally. EduCause has a podcast they do sometimes. But they have very targeted markets that really kind of maybe accidentally hit on student affairs. So I think there's just not a lot this specific like this hours, like a student affairs professionals, and I think that really helps that we had our niche in there, and I think also that helps is that there are student affairs professionals that we bring on the air, and sometimes I got to say on the technology podcast we bring people outside of higher ed onto it, like Anya Kamenetz came on to talk about DIYU, mm-hmm. Eric came on to talk about. To talk about what's his book? Socionomics.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is what happens when you have so many shows. You forget like what the episodes have been.
I know, and honestly, I thought the technology podcast would be kind of me and Jeff and Laura sitting around talking about Twitter or something like that. But we've had some really great guests, including you and Seth and others that have come on there.
Well, dude, you're like the Godfather. You got to realize that. I mean. This show, Seth Odell just tweeted that, you were a big inspiration for Higher Ed Live. I know that, the interview series that Ed Cabellin does, the fact that I have a show right now, we were all sort of inspired and you kind of gave everyone the courage to kind of go out there and do it. I mean, the first time I came on your show was when you had Tom Jackson on, who was at the time, he was the president of ACPA. I mean, so you don't mess around. You've had some.
And that was like our 4th or 5th podcast. Like we had just started, and I can't believe he came on. So big thanks to Tom Jackson. I felt like he legitimized our show like in the early days for coming on.
Well, I think that, and I've had that same sort of sentiment when it comes to my show. I have a big show coming up in about 3 weeks with a guest that I can't even tell you who it is yet, but it's going to be, kind of a big deal in terms of the profession. And my first thought was, I can't believe they're coming to me because they want to be on the show. But I think it's just people who are in student affairs. We're not necessarily known for producing media.
Yeah.
We produce events. We do a lot of programming. We write in our journal articles. We do conference presentations, sessions, that type of thing. But we don't do a lot of media production.
Yeah, I think that in student affairs in general, we're not trained to be like entrepreneurial or makers in a sense. Like we're really trained to be doers. Like we're great at that. Like we have this kind of like great training around how to put programs together and how to run events and all this kind of stuff. But things like how to make learning outcomes out of scratch, or how to like there's still the making part of it is lagging. I think that we see more of that, and I think technology is helping that. There's more professionals blogging now. There's more professionals that are in a sense they're writing mini journal articles by putting this little mini research things out there and doing videos. I mean, Ed's done great stuff with his interview series, and now he started the Essay Grow. I don't think he had any idea how big Essay Grow is going to be. It started with kind of a blog post, and it's huge now. He needs help doing it, and now he's raising scholarship funds from that, which is amazing. And so I think it started with one or two or a core group of people, and it's really expanding into other people doing the same / similar thing.
Well, and I think that it's the web. The web allows us to create things that we couldn't have 10 years ago, at least in the same way as we're doing it now. And I mean, the technology has just grown and evolved. I mean, this show alone and your podcast, I mean, you've got audio and Skype, and we've got video here, and Twitter's happening. And I mean, there's just a lot of different components to it. So I think that we can put together shows and professional development forums that don't require a ton of capital, but can have a massive impact. I mean, right now there are folks following the Twitter hashtag. Essay Live is blowing up right now. I'm taking a look at it right now as we speak, and it's amazing to me that we're getting a lot of traction. I think simply because we had the courage to say, let's just try it. We have an idea. Let's do it.
Yeah, I gotta say, poor Kyle Oman. I don't know if he's even watching, but he's getting like pounded with Twitter messages about dorm.
Right. Well, and I see that. Folks, that was a tweet that Kyle put out there, and I think JPK also, Julie Payne-Kirchmeier, says that maybe folks are searching more for campus housing, which housing is definitely a big search word as well. And so, be nice to Kyle. He posed the question and put it out there, and I'm the one who sort of outed it out on him. So,
but hey, people can go to google.com/trends. Put in whatever search terms you want and compare them.
Yeah. Well, and I think that sometimes, the train has already left the station, and people kind of want to bring it back. How long were certain words used, and then it sort of, we decided as a profession, okay, we're going to use this word, residence life, instead. And folks, we're talking about something I brought up in Challenge and Support earlier, sort of the difference between the Google ability of different search terms like dorm or res life. And so Jeff Lale just said he's going to start calling his apartment his dorm. Thank you, Jeff Lale. That's hashtag Jeff Lale's dorm. Every time Jeff Lale comes up with something, we'll come up with a new hashtag. So back to the topic. One of the things that I want to talk about is the fact that folks don't have a ton of cash right now in general. Professional development funds have been slashed at a lot of different schools. People can't travel. I know I have some really good friends who haven't been able to travel. There have been travel restrictions. There's no money at all. If you want to go to an event, you got to pay for it completely out of pocket. And let's face it, student affairs professionals aren't making a ton of money to begin with to put in their pocket. So one of the things that has always bugged me in a way is people will say, well, we don't have enough funds for professional development. And one of the things I wrote down was, sort of my show notes here was, lack of professional development funding does not equal lack of professional development time. Because if you don't have the funds to travel, well, why can't you host things on your campus? And yet people rarely do that. There are sometimes people on your campus, you're not going to see them out and about on your campus, but when you're at a conference, you'll socialize with them and talk to them and hang out with them. And that seems like that happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was wondering, what do you think about that? Because it seems like people don't have to travel to get professional development.
Yeah, it's almost like we established this professional development world years ago. Like once a year, maybe twice a year if you're lucky, you go to a conference, you learn some stuff, you bring it back to your campus, and it happens all over again the following year. And I think the web really gives us the ability to have professional development as an ongoing tool. I mean, people participate in SA Chat on a weekly basis. That's pretty cool. They listen to this show or one of our podcasts or Ed's interview. They may not realize it, but they're accidentally getting professional development on a weekly basis. It's not just an annual, I'm going to go to a conference anymore. Anyone who has something to say, you have a venue to say it at. I got to do a keynote for Texas State last week, and we talked about social media and digital citizenship. And one of the things I said to them as educators, a lot of times we talk to you about finding your voice. What are the things you're passionate about? What are the things you care about? And using your voice there. But we don't talk about how to use your voice necessarily. Like we went through and defined it, and then once they find it, what do you do with it? You kind of hold on to it. And there's all these great venues for them. They can start blog posts or podcasts or YouTube channels. There's all these great venues that there are things that you're passionate about or care about. Is to start talking about it. And the same for student affairs professionals. Find ways to talk about it. Find ways to find people who are talking about it and join in what they're doing. I don't know if we need 200 different podcasts going on, but just to join what's already happening is great also.
Well, and I think there's just an ebb and flow. There's people that come in, they produce content for a while, maybe they get busy, and someone else kind of steps up and starts helping out and writing and creating. And there's a lot of people who are producing amazing content. I read a lot of the industry publications, but I also read a lot of blogs and folks who tweet amazing things or just post things on Facebook that help with my learning throughout the day.
Yeah.
And it's professional development.
And speaking of Seth Odell, a couple of nights ago, he and I had a great just Twitter conversation about the higher education bubble. Mm-hmm. And it was I said something randomly. He replied back to it, and for, 30 minutes, we kind of tweeted back and forth. And it wasn't like it was a huge conversation, but it was cool. I got to get insight from someone else in a different state, in a different job that has a different, experience. So we had this kind of just great conversation that night about it.
Well, I mean, what is it? Kelly McCarthy, she's got this whole 52 and 52 thing that she's doing where she's interviewing a different student affairs practitioner every week, one person each week. And, she's going to write about it. She's going to hopefully present about it at a conference. Talk about a way for her to learn about the profession, learn from a variety of professionals of varying levels of expertise and position. And what did it cost her? Nothing. She had to have her computer and an internet connection, and all she had to do was fire up Skype, and she's having an awesome conversation. Right. These are one-on-ones. I mean, heck, all the time we wish we could have one-on-one time with people, and she's doing it. And how did it happen? She just put it out there and said, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and then it started rolling.
And I think also to say that I noticed a surge last year. I know it's been going on longer, but it seemed like last year every professional conference or regional association of a conference started doing more webinars. And I believe most of the webinars are free. Some will probably pay, but they started doing more webinars to do more mingling or the mid-year kind of professional development for people in their association. So it seems that even the organizations are starting to do more online and not just wait for the conference anymore.
Yeah, well, and they have to evolve. It's sort of a long-term funding model for associations that their annual conferences are kind of their cash cow. That's how they get a lot of their revenue for the year, their operating budget. And those are still going to happen. People are still going to attend them, but at the same time, you can't have sort of this big gap, 364 days before the next big event. You have to keep engaging with folks. Otherwise, it's going to be filled by folks producing content. And I think the associations realize that they have to get in on this via, there's like the Akuho I blog, for example. They put up a ton of really cool posts on that blog.
Yeah, they do.
NASPA tweets. They've been tweeting. They really get how to use Twitter. The folks at NASPA do. ACY's been doing some stuff. The ACPA president, she's got a blog. Heidi Levine has a blog. And so it's really cool to see what our associations have been doing. NACADA just came out with a blog. And they're producing, and people are just producing more free content. I think that's the other thing too with professional development, is that you don't have to pay for it to be good. I think that's the message. I think ACPA came out with it was a PDF file about alcoholic beverages with caffeine in them. It was kind of a guide what you need to know, and it was awesome. You could take a look at that, read through it, and get a really good understanding of what beverages like Four Loko do to people, and have be able to articulate it. And they gave it away. It wasn't a pay X amount of dollars for this PDF. I thought that was amazing.
What about in the campuses you worked at? Did you do like your own student affairs on-campus conference?
Wow, this is like you just shifted gears, and now it's the Jeff Jackson interviews Eric Stoller show. So I don't have any notes. So
tell me about your childhood, Eric.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's what I did when I was at Oregon State University. When I was a graduate student, obviously I was big into technology because it was a big thing for me. And Seth Odell just asked, "What do I want to know what Four Loko does to him? We can schedule a Skype demonstration." That's okay. I'll take a pass on that. When I was at Oregon State University, I put together a series of technology workshops. Now I happened to do it for credit as a graduate student, but these were technology workshops, and they were specifically for my peers in my graduate cohort. And I just got a computer lab and put on these sessions, a variety of things about blogs, Photoshop, web video, and people came along, and it was awesome. I had a really good time, and I learned kind of how to facilitate stuff. It was kind of my first professional facilitation thing, and they learned some technology stuff, so it was really kind of neat. In terms of professionally, academic advising was my former position at Oregon State when I was a full-time employee there, and we put on stuff every once in a while, but usually it was for the academic advising crew within the college that I worked for. However, when I was at University of Illinois at Chicago, put on workshops on website accessibility, campus marketing, that type of thing, because that's what I was doing at the time. But I think that's the biggest thing is there are experts on your campuses who can put on amazing sessions for free. They're already employed there, but you have to give them the time. That's the one thing I think that supervisors will say, well, we don't have professional development funds. Right. Well, then I would counter that with, well, give me professional development time.
Right.
Because if you can't pay for it for me to travel, give me a day to host something. Give me time to put it together versus essentially you're saying we don't have funds and we don't have time to give you, because that's really what happens at a lot of schools is they don't give people time.
Yeah, and one thing previous institutions, I know we did it at least once at the University of Arizona. We did it on an annual basis at the University of Texas. We had our own student affairs conference where we may have paid like $15 of dues to our own campus association, but then we brought in like a speaker for the conference or someone kind of regional, not someone huge, and that was great because everyone got to attend at least one conference a year. It was on your own campus the full day. But here at the Health Science Center, there's a guy in the library. I think it's Luke the librarian on Twitter. But there's a guy in the library named Luke that right as I started here, he wanted to help facilitate more social media use on campus. So he started our own group that we meet once a month. And I came from the meeting right before we came here. So there's people in the libraries, the Laura Pasquini's School of Information people in the library that use it often. There's the student affairs people. The campus architect was there. The campus webmaster, people who run these really cool health centers on campus that do research in like Latino populations and doctors and dentists and all of these really cool people are in this one room learning about social media. And we do it once a month. And other people from the room present. So other people come and present on how they're using social media on campus or in their life, or how to manage it using a Google Reader, things like that. So we're not bringing in outside people. We're not doing huge conferences. We just reserve a room once a month, put up the flyers, and there's been about, 40 to 50 people each time.
Oh, that's awesome turnout. I think that, again, get the space, get the time, give people enough time to put something together, and there are champions on every single campus for almost every student affairs area that can give amazing presentations. And I think it's a matter of giving folks the time and be intentional with the fact that this is truly professional development. It doesn't have to be an external thing. And I think that, let's see, Andy Campbell here tweeted that they're doing a student affairs conference at Rutgers in December. Tweet it out there. Share with the folks who are watching SA Live if your campus is doing an on-campus sort of student affairs conference, because we'd love to know about them, because I think that we gotta let other folks know what we're up to, what we're doing. One thing too, Jeff, that I think that you mentioned and I want to kind of piggyback off of was that the idea of that professional development, it shouldn't be sort of relegated to the noon hour or to the sort of post 5 o'clock timeline, because I think a lot of times, at least in my experience, people have said to me, well, you can do that, because a lot of times professional development doesn't have to be a student affairs generated event. It could be someone from an academic department or some other unit on campus putting together something that you just think is interesting, that's going to make you more informed about what's happening either locally on your campus or who knows, nationally, whatnot. And so it's not just about saying to folks, do it during your lunch break or do it after work, after 5. Let folks be involved with an intentional sort of sense of professional development throughout the day, if that's what they want to do, because you don't have money. You can't give them money, but give them time.
Yeah. It is. It's funny because actually someone knows Luke, and so he let him know that I gave him a shout out. So yeah, so Luke's done a good job of collaborating on this campus, because it's not easy. And the great thing is about this is that when you're on a campus that has a small student affairs staff, is I get to expand off and to know some really cool academic people. They're running some really cool academic health clinics and the Valley and things like that. So that's really cool. Yeah, but what I just said about time is really cool. And also, if you're in a managerial place and you don't want to be able to, or you don't have the ability to bring in guest speakers, and maybe you've run through your staff presentations. I think Heather Gasser tweeted out where some maybe references some webinars that they've done from previous professional organizations. There's a lot of this information out there. I think we have probably 20 to 25 videos on the breakdrink.com site from previous conferences. If you're not Jeff Well, you can go to the TED website and look at all the TED videos. There's great content that's out there. Use these podcasts or these video casts. Use Ed's interviews. Mm-hmm. Play them with your staff. Have discussions about what it is that they're seeing or learning on there. So, you can make your own conference with outside speakers without having to pay outside speakers to come there.
Yeah, well, there's just a ton of content that's been generated, and I wanted to point out that Kevin Guidry tweeted that go beyond the professionals, tap your students, especially grad students and especially doctoral students with professional experience. And I would say absolutely. Tap those who have valuable information to share. Student professionals, students have tons of insight as to what's going on. Partner up with your students. Have a seasoned professional present with an undergraduate student who works in your office or your department. Think of that presentation. How awesome would that be? They'd get a good experience out of it, as well as sharing information that would probably be really insightful.
Yeah, and I believe there's enough dorm tweets today to have a really good presentation on the use of the word dorm. All you have to do is look at the timeline, and you don't have to bring someone in. You can just read the timeline and everyone tweeting dorm. Absolutely. I feel like no one's listening to us right now.
Right. Everyone's researching. Everyone's doing research on the word dorm versus residence life or residence hall or campus housing, and I had no idea the can of worms that I was opening up in the challenge and support. The single most challenging aspect of this episode thus far is keeping us on track versus diving into the semantic aspect of the word dorm. Thanks, folks, for checking in on the show. I know that some of you are paying attention via Twitter. Again, the hashtag is #SALive. No, it has nothing to do with saliva. It's Student Affairs Live. I had someone tweet that out earlier. It looks like folks are really sharing some cool information about some of the things that they've got going on at their institutions in terms of some sort of hosted events. Looks like University of South Carolina had their annual Student Affairs Conference just a week and a half ago. I just missed it, my bad. Looks like Ardith, who tweets as at Higher Ed Live during the show, is interested in putting on a mini workshop on Twitter. That's the thing. You know what? Folks are generally interested in these sessions and this kind of information. You just have to sort of have the nerve and the gumption to go out there and put it together. Because before Break Drink, before Higher Ed Live, before our blogs, our sites, whatnot, there wasn't a lot out there. People just weren't generating that much stuff, and now we just did it. It's the sort of we didn't have anybody telling us we couldn't, and so we just did. Yeah.
I think we should have a conference, the I'm not going to ask permission conference.
Right.
Just to encourage people to go do things.
Yeah, well, that's the sort of the unconference idea. I know that there's some talk about holding an unconference possibly maybe later on this summer. I know there's something going on in Boston, I want to say at the end of July 29th, that's going to be happening. And so professional development, I mean, I almost hesitated to call this show the Alternative Professional Development Show just because I don't see what we do as alternative or alternative. It just is. It's just different than what came before us, yet we're just kind of resetting things, changing it up a bit.
Yeah. And one thing we're going to do, and I'll just get this plug out of the way.
Go for it.
We've had 2 online conferences, and they've been mediocrely attended. A lot of people love to sign. I've noticed people love to sign up for conferences online. They don't love to attend conferences online. So we've had like a huge number of signups for like a small number of attendees. And when we can do a podcast and we reach like 200 people, it's a lot easier to do that than it is to do this full blown conference that maybe 30 to 50 people show up. Well, I don't know what the issue is. There's probably several, but one of the things that we wanted to do is I don't like how we've just been doing traditional conference presentations and putting them in an online format, which is, you show the PowerPoint, you ask the questions, that kind of thing. So we want to do something more unique, and we haven't fully done all the details, but I think the gist is going to be we want people to have small, like 10-minute presentations, maybe 15 if we feel generous, but probably 10-minute presentations. And I don't want you to feel like this is your typical student affairs conference, like these are the objectives for this thing, and list the 5 bullet points. Yeah.
And is there a theme? Please tell me there isn't a theme.
There's there may be a question asked, but in a very broad term. There's not a theme like the land of 10,000 lakes, 10,000 opportunities.
Down by the river, or
Yes.
Exactly.
Into the future, the future is now, or something like that. So no, nothing like that. I think we'll have like a question or something we want you to answer on there. And it doesn't have to be full of like data and theories and stuff. We want people to think about the future of the profession and have thoughts and plans and ideas. And they may be horrible, they may not work out, and they may be unfounded, but it doesn't matter. We want people to think. And so we're in a place where we keep trying to fix the problems with the economy and the current economics of the institution by the way we've always done things. Like, if we cut this department, if we do this, but we need new ideas and new thoughts. And so we want to have a short presentation on this. And then we're going to have like a group chat session after that, kind of a moderated chat session. And so we want to do it during the lunchish hour in June, which I know is like tomorrow.
Which lunch hour would you be speaking? I know now, since I'm like multi-time zone here, I want to make sure.
Yeah, probably 2 of them.
Okay.
So, and one Wednesday we'll have 2 sessions, and then the next Wednesday we'll have 2 sessions. So two of your time zones would have to either take lunch early or late, and so we'll figure that out. So hopefully on Tuesday, is Tuesday the 31st or the 1st?
The 31st is Tuesday. Yep.
Yeah, so probably on Tuesday. If you go to breakdrink.com/conference, the information will be there. Oh, one thing I want to do some sort of blind review. I want like the community to be able to vote on, if we get like 20 presentations for 4 slots, I want the community to be able to vote on topics without knowing who it is. So if you're like the essay chat, star or whatever, that was air quotes if you listen to the audio version, that you don't automatically get like a lot of votes. We want, because people who are grad students, undergrads, whoever, can have great things to say about the future of our profession. And we're still working on, as you can see, we're still working on the details. But we want to have something kind of really cool and different than our normal conference presentations. So we'll probably do 4 of them. If it works out, we may do some more in July. And so we'll have, if you go to breakdrink.com/conference, the details will be there probably next Tuesday.
Okay, cool. Well, one thing I want to point out too is that Jeff does this for the betterment of our community. He's not getting, money. He's not getting compensated. And so kudos to you, Jeff, for doing this. I think that, you are a gigantic leader in this profession. And I do not mean how tall you are, because I believe you are a tall gentleman, but I know that what you do and what you produce is vast, and you do a lot of good things for the community. And so, kudos to you for that. And I think that, every time we just try to mix it up and change things around and experiment, I mean, that's the one thing too, is don't be afraid to mess up or afraid to innovate, because gosh, if we were afraid to try these things out, none of our shows, none of our blogs would ever happen, because we break them half the time. I mean, we don't know half the time if any of this is going to work. Skype goes down, Twitter fails, our computers die. It takes a leap of faith in a way. And so, I'm really excited about the fact that you're just kind of mixing it up, trying to innovate, try to just change things up a little bit. One of the comments that I wanted to point out or just kind of talk about a little bit was Jeff Lale tweeted that you can't take a conference in person, or you can't take the in-person conference experience anyway, and put it online, that the medium dictates the message. And I thought about this a little bit, and by a little bit I mean about 5 milliseconds, because this is a live show, folks, let's face it. And I thought, for me, an in-person event, what I get out of it oftentimes is not the sessions. I go to so many conferences each year that I'm almost sick and tired of going to sessions, because I've been to a lot of bad sessions. What I get from conferences is that networking piece. It's the meeting people face to face and just getting to know folks in person. That's what I get from going to conferences. It's that networking component. And so I think if you could separate that from the learning piece, I think I could learn a whole lot more from what you just talked about from a practitioner perspective than perhaps the networking piece, which is what I would get from an in-person conference. So I think that's for me, that's the key difference. Is in person you get the networking, and for online you don't network nearly as much. However, I will say this: folks that are connecting right now through the Essay Live hashtag, following each other, or when they're doing the essay chat right now, when they do that on Thursdays, and it's a massive community and people follow and start connecting and start direct messaging. They're networking. It's just different. It's not face to face. It's DM to DM, or follow to follow type thing.
Yeah, I will say I think the in conference, the session piece, I think can be really similar, because I think the back channels for conferences or webinars, or even this podcast that we do, is more active as a real back channel than at a conference. The conference back channel seems to be people tweeting out what they're seeing, but not really engaging in conversation at the conference. And so I think kind of, if we did a presentation on alternative conferences, we would probably be as interactive, or they would get the same information if we're at a conference or on this video cast. But I gotta say, I loved ACUI this year, not because of the sessions I went to, which were good, but because of the interactions I had outside of the sessions. I got to meet Ed Cabellon for the first time, and Terry Bump, and a lot of other people. I hang out with Jeff a lot. Jeff Lell and I did a lot of brainstorming for a break drink as we were there, and things that we do online. But there's something just nice about being at the same table at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that piece of it, we can't really replace. And I wouldn't say that we're trying to replace anything. We're trying to supplement things, or trying to help people who can't go to any conferences. I don't think NASPA is really worried about what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're definitely it's just a small chunk out of the overall pie for sure.
Yeah.
Mainly because we just don't have the people power, the capital, the resources. One thing though I think that you hit on was that what we can do online is, and this doesn't happen at conferences. You said the back channel conversation at conferences is definitely just people tweeting out quotes, things like that. We're almost facilitating a discussion through this medium where we can interact with folks. Like right now, I can read what people are saying on Twitter, ask the questions or share the questions that they're tweeting, or respond to what they're saying, put you in on it, have you answer their questions. And so we're facilitating a discussion versus just having a talking head or a one-way conversation. And I think that's what we can do online, is we can have a facilitated conversation with a ton of people.
Yeah.
And it seems like at conferences, those facilitated conversations, those are few and far between. When you get to go to a session like that, those are usually the ones that I enjoy the most, when it's a facilitated conversation versus a talking head with a PowerPoint.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like people need to go to conferences though and do conference sessions on how to give good conference sessions. I mean, stop relying on your PowerPoint, stop putting all the text on there, but that's a different thing.
Right. That's another conversation for another day. How to put on a good conference session at a conference would be or how to write a conference proposal and then actually present what you put in the program. Versus something else would be amazing. Let's see. Kevin Guidry says purely online back channels are filled with self-selected persons with some tech competence or curiosity. And I think Kevin's point is, as I read it anyway, is that there aren't that many people participating in back channels right now, but eventually over time, as it becomes sort of just and it's not necessarily an amenity, but it's just a feature of a conference, more and more people will do it. But again, it has to be a facilitated conversation. What people are doing online when it comes to professional development through conferences, it doesn't feel like a big community of folks sharing knowledge. It's just sort of one way.
Right.
And so I'm excited to see what you come out with. You said it's going to be next week, May 31st.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll post it online and send out the Twitter message and all that stuff next Tuesday.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Lindsay Miles states that Toastmasters is a great resource to help your presentation skills at conferences, or any presentation for that matter. And I think she makes a great point. Professional development, enhancing your skills, can come from a lot of different places. I mean, honestly, if you want to find out about how to give a good speech or how to give a good talk, go to YouTube. There are tons and tons of awesome talks out there. Figure out what people did that made you interested, and you can kind of borrow some of those ideas or those tactics or techniques. So folks, if you have a question for Jeff, please feel free to tweet it at SA Live. We've got about 10 more minutes or so going here, and I want to make sure we get your questions in. Let's see. I think Dion Davila used the longest hashtag ever, stabbing your eyes out at bad conference sessions as an amazing hashtag. I want to go back to the idea, though, that there are people on your campus who can give amazing sessions, and I wanted to give a shout out to Joe Sabato. He's at UC Santa Barbara, and I did an essay tech profile of him for my Inside Higher Ed blog, and Joe was giving some sessions around mobile tech and social media, and they're producing some amazing things. I mean, I'm going to try to go through their materials, even though I'm not in California, I'm not affiliated with that institution. There's a ton of information there and a ton of learning that can occur.
Yeah, and if you think, especially if you're like a large research institution, when you think of, for example, we had Sarah Weddington come talk about at a women's leadership conference. And Sarah Weddington, if you don't know, she was the attorney that did Roe versus Wade. She was very young at the time. It had an amazing story about women and leadership, and especially at a time where women when she was going through law school interviews, they were asking her, how are you going to be a lawyer and cook for your husband at the same time? Like that was the era that she went through, and just was amazing to hear her story. And she taught at the University of Texas, and came over and didn't charge anything for her time. And so at your campus, you probably have great professors that are doing great research that are still going to affect your audience, still in the development or social justice. They can come over and have crossover and use those resources. I mean, professors who do research love to talk about their research. And so your problem is once you start it, is probably limiting the number of people that will come in.
Yeah. Well, and I want to say this, when you negotiate your position, if you're a new professional coming in, when you're negotiating sort of your salary, your benefits, or whatnot, and you ask about professional development, make sure you ask the question of, is there time available for you to do professional development on the campus that you're working at? Because it's not just about those dollars for professional development. Ask them if there's time for you that you can do this, where it's either you putting something on, organizing something, or you can just attend things, because it seems like people just get people love polarized things, right? It's either black or white or this or that.
Right.
And
yeah,
live in the gray, folks. You can go to conferences every once in a while, go to events, drive-in events, attend webinars, etc. But there's also cool stuff that you can do right on your campus.
Yeah, and a Twitter comment from Matt, and I don't know if it's Matt Day or Matt Dig. Matt, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Sorry, you can't really tell me. But he says, do people still read for professional development? And no, they don't.
Well, okay.
Okay, just
all
kidding.
sarcasm aside, yeah.
They do, yeah. I have a Google Reader that have way too many things that go in there, and have a lot of blogs that come in there that are not higher education related, so it's more personal interest and personal development. But but very good point.
Yeah, well, and it's not just online reading either. Sometimes, obviously, like the Journal of Student Development, College Student Development, lots of good stuff there about campus. There's a lot of different things. Reading is where we all got our start when it came to professional development. We didn't necessarily think of it that way, but that's where it came from. And so there's a lot of great publications out there. For example, Laura Pasquini and I co-wrote a chapter with a couple other folks for sort of academic advising and technology for advising administrators, and it's going to come out in a monograph for NACADA. Or there's a chapter that I'm working on for an acro text on strategic enrollment management, and I'm working on the sort of the social media communications marketing side of that stuff. Now, so there's a lot of different resources that are coming out. The biggest thing is when you see something that you think might be valuable to you as a professional development resource, think intentionally about it. Maybe you write some reflective pieces about what you got out of it, share it with some folks. There's just a ton of information out there.
And if you're a great writer, then write. Don't feel you have to do videos or all this stuff. You go to your strengths. And if that's what you want to do, then that's the kind of content you should be putting out there.
Absolutely. Go to your strengths. That's a great quote.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, any final thoughts for the folks watching the show today?
I do want to have a shout out to TJ Willis. I wore this for him. I don't know if you can get this on camera.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's the Chick-fil-A logo. Yep.
Yes, the Chick-fil-A logo. Because the origin of Break Drink is when we all went to get our sweet tea in the afternoon from Chick-fil-A at the University of Arizona. When I left, the manager gave me some of his collection of Chick-fil-A ties. So wow. I wear one today for TJ.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, thanks for coming on the show. As always, you're a great guest, and I'll definitely bring you on for a future show because
anytime.
You've got tons of stuff to talk about. So thanks again, Jeff, and really let us know about the stuff that's happening next week. We'll share it with the audience.
Will do.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
All right.
All right, folks, we're wrapping up another episode here of Student Affairs Live, and I really wanted to point out again that there are tons of professional development opportunities. Seek them out. They don't necessarily have to cost money. You don't have to travel for them. Lots of good things that can happen for you. Lots of learning that can occur. Lastly, I want to point out a couple things. Please feel free to follow Jeff Jackson on Twitter. He's at Jeff Jackson. And that is his son Titus, I believe, who's on there. And that's probably the most adorable photo of all time. So follow Jeff for his awesome content. But again, you might want to follow him because his Twitter avatar is completely adorable. Last but not least, a couple more things. Next week's show, going to have a really interesting show next week. I'm going to have Daniel Swinton on. Daniel is the president of the Association for Student Conduct Administration, as well as the Assistant Dean and Director of the Office of Student Conduct and Academic Integrity at Vanderbilt University. And that show, June 1st, is going to be all about conceal and carry on campus. So that show is going to be all about conceal and carry from a student conduct perspective. What does it mean to have students armed on campus? From a student conduct perspective, it's kind of a sticky issue. Tweet your questions in advance, folks, because I guarantee you this is going to be a massive show next week with Daniel Swinton on. And so please feel free to watch that. It's going to be massive. Also, want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Integral. They are the creators of the Schools app on Facebook. Be sure to check out their webinar series about how they can help you leverage Facebook to increase yield and retention. That webinar happens this Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. And we'll be tweeting that out from @HigherEdLive via a link here in just a second. So again, folks, thank you for watching. It's been an awesome episode. I'll get the archive up in just a little bit. But as always, my name's Eric Stoller. This is Student Affairs Live, and we will see you next week.